I'm here to tell you today that changing the way you collect is okay. It's actually natural. People evolve as collectors. And when you started collecting, when you got into the sports card hobby, whatever you bought back then, whatever you were into back then, whatever your style of buying cards or flipping cards or building out your collection was, it may be different for you today, and it's perfectly okay. If it's not different for you today, maybe you need to step back for a minute and think about your style of collecting and if there's ways you can evolve it and improve it to make it work better for you. And maybe if you're into this, make it work better as a long-term investment opportunity. Today, I'm going to sit down with Tyler Nethercott. You know him as T-Pott from our Market Movers channel and our Sports Card Investor channel. And we are going to talk about why it can be smart to change the way you collect. Let's go. The Geoff Wilson Show is brought to you by Arena Club, the official home of slab packs. Now available every day, slab packs offer an exciting way to collect graded cards with confidence. Plus, every pack comes with an instant offer to buy your slab. Don't miss out. Explore the latest slab packs and more by downloading the Arena Club app. Just search Arena Club in your app store and use promo code SCI20 for 20% off your first purchase. T-Pott, welcome back to the show. Good to see you as always.
Yep, happy to be here.
I'm excited to get into this today. I know you've got a lot of thoughts about this topic, and I think it's something that both of us have experienced, right? We both got back into sports cards. You prior to me. I got back in it about 2018, really kind of heavy heading into 2019. And I think you were around then.
It's about a year behind you. Yep.
Yeah, or I guess a little bit behind me. I guess I got in a little before you, but we were both right around that same era. And I know we've had conversations about this before, that what we were buying, what we were into, what we were collecting at first is different than what we're buying, what we're into, and what we're collecting today. And in fact, I think maybe it's changed multiple times. You've talked about kind of the natural evolution of a collector and how you go through different phases. And we wanted to talk about that today with the audience because we wanted to let people know not only is this natural, not only is this okay, but it's smart to think about and to think about evolving how you collect as you get deeper into the hobby. Let's start. Tell me a little bit kind of about your journey and how your collecting style has changed over time.
I just collected as a kid in the 90s, almost exclusively basketball. And I had, first of all, we did not like Michael Jordan in my household as a Pistons family. We didn't like Jordan or the Bulls. So
that's a shame for you now.
Financially, it's a huge shame. Yes. It's a huge shame that I got into, primarily collecting Penny Hardaway and Gary Payton.
Okay. Not bad players.
Not bad, but not the ones that paid off. I was trading all of my Michael Jordan cards to my friend Elliot in return for his Penny Hardaways and Gary Paytons. So didn't work out financially. Elliot's probably retired in the Bahamas somewhere now. But that's how I got my start. And then, flash forward, dabbled a little bit in the 2000s, mid 2000s, when I didn't have any money and was out of college. And then ultimately came back in 2019, found your podcast, started flipping small dollar cards on eBay. And what I've realized is during that time, I didn't know what was what. You're just trying to figure everything out, and everything looks kind of cool. And you see things that, oh, look at this jersey piece, and then you learn later that the player never touched it, and there's just knowledge and information that comes along the way. But most often what happens, and this definitely was true for me, is I think about things on a matrix, and I built this as a diagram in a video I did one time in terms of low variety to high variety, and then low price to high price. And most people, when they come back in, start somewhere in that low to medium price range, but middle variety, and then they start discovering all the new things that are out there, and they're just buying everything. They get that Pokemon syndrome of got to catch them all. This is cool. I'm on eBay. I'm scrolling through every list on this consignor's page, and I didn't know that. And then you wake up one day. It might be a month. It might be 6 months. It might be 2 years later, and you go, oh my gosh, I have so many cards. I'm surrounded by so many things. Oh, this isn't really worth anything anymore. What do I do with all of this? You go through some kind of a consolidation period, and you move all those cards. You bring them into Cards HQ. You sell them to a local dealer. You do something. You spend the time on eBay. Then you get that chunk of money back, and you go, man, maybe I need to get that Grant Hill PMG that I always wanted when I was a kid. Instead of all these other things, I want that one card that I always dreamt of, whatever that card might be. And so people move into the consolidation phase with higher dollar cards and lower variety, but things that are more meaningful. That's a very typical trajectory for people. That doesn't mean it's the right trajectory. It doesn't mean it's the only way you should do it, but that's very common. It's taken me honestly like 6 years, but I've finally gotten to the point where I have a very clear list of things that I will or won't buy now, even some stuff on the won't buy side that I like, but it's not high enough up on my list. And so that's kind of what the evolution has been.
I think that's a familiar journey. I that story resonates a lot with me. For me, it was back in the 80s collecting baseball cards as opposed to in the 90s collecting basketball, like with you, right? Which, of course, I actually have all those baseball cards still. I still have all of them. 20,000 cards from my 80s
They
childhood.
won't buy them here.
worth absolutely nothing. That was the wrong era to be card collecting. And then got out of it for many years and got back into it. And I totally get what you just said about like when you get back into it, having this like everything shiny and I want all of it syndrome as you start seeing more and more. I remember, for example, just like one very specific memory. I was probably in cards for like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months. And then I was at a card shop and they had just gotten in Spectra, I think it would have been Spectra Basketball.
Yeah, 2018.
Probably
maybe.
2018 Spectra Basketball. Yes, 2018 Spectra Basketball had just come out. And and I'm like, what is this? I've never heard of Spectra Basketball. I've never seen Spectra Basketball before. And I'm looking at it and I bought a box of it. I opened up Spectra and I'm like, these cards are crazy. They're like all these like really cool pattern designs. They're much more shiny and glimmery. Many of them are die cuts. Yeah. I'm not familiar.
Thicker card stock.
Right. And then I kind of got all of a sudden like, obsessed with Spectra Basketball and buying Spectra Basketball, right? And think, oh, this is really cool. Why do more people not talk about Spectra? Then all of a sudden I saw Revolution. I'm like, wait, what is Revolution Basketball? What is this? Look at these cards. These cards are all crazy and they've got these short prints of different levels of this stuff. And I don't know what this stuff is. And I'm kind of, then all of a sudden I see Court Kings. What is this Court Kings business? And what is Crown Royale? What are these different levels of rookie cards that, all this stuff, right? And I kind of just started getting all of this stuff. All these new sets. Every new set that came out was exciting to me. Every single new set, because it was all new to me. And I'm like, this is all exciting. Like all of this stuff is exciting, but the excitement can become kind of like overwhelmed, and it becomes also a complete lack of focus with your collection. And I think part of that maturity that you're talking about, part of that consolidation phase, for me, it was a lot about focus, because if you just go really wide and start buying a lot of stuff, you end up with somewhat of a unmanageable collection, but you also end up with a very unfocused collection. Yeah. And as you listen to the best collectors in the world, we do videos on Sports Card Investor, we do these videos, these slabs videos with very, very high-end collections and collectors, right? And so, granted, not everybody obviously is going to be putting millions of dollars into cards, but these collectors, every single one of them has a tremendous amount of focus. They have a reason why every single card is in their collection. In some cases, with some of the collectors like Ken Kendrick, it's a wide variety of different cards from different sports and different eras. But for him, it was his top 50 most iconic cards of all time. Patrick Ryan, who we did the slabs with, same way. He had 100 cards. It was his personal top 100 most iconic cards of all time, which his list overlapped with what you would see in a lot of publications, what a lot of people would consider the top 100 iconic cards of all time. There was quite a bit of overlap with his list and other lists, but there was also some uniqueness. There were some cards that he had in his collection or that Ken Kendrick had in his collection that you wouldn't necessarily expect to see on somebody's top 100 or top 20 or top 50, but to them it was, and they could explain why it was. So it was focus, it was reason. Then we've seen other collectors like Nat Turner, who his collection is largely oriented around basketball and largely oriented around guys like Jordan, especially Jordan and LeBron, and 90s inserts. Yeah. And he has some vintage baseball, that incredible vintage baseball as well, but his collection is certain pockets. Yep. You don't see this wide variety where he's going from a ultra modern football card to a vintage hockey card back to a modern basketball card. It's focus, and there's reason. And you don't have to be a collector who is spending millions of dollars on cards to do that. You can have the same level of focus on any budget level. You pick out the things you think are cool and you go after them. For my son Reeves, it's all about football specifically. He's just football primarily, and he's case hits. And case hits also doesn't have to mean that you're dropping a ton of money on kabooms and downtowns. He loves things like kaleidoscopics. He loves those cards. Those are actually case hits in football. They're not case hits in basketball, but they're case hits in football. I don't know why, but Panini did it that way. But in football, they're case hits. But they're not that expensive. They're more inexpensive case hits. There's other ones like Drip, which is really cool. Zoom, which is really cool. Explosive, which is kind of the younger brother of Kaboom, right? There's case hits like that, which are more affordable, more attainable. They're still super cool. He collects them. That allows him to kind of have a lane and a focus. If you are into football case hits and you find Reeves at a trade night, he's going to be your guy for that, because he's going to have a case full of them that he'll show you and maybe do some deals. And if you've got football case hits, Reeves is going to be your guy for that, because he's going to want them from you, right? And that's his thing. And I think that concept of like focusing around something is part of that collecting maturity. And it makes it, in my opinion, it makes it feel better, because it gives you more of a focus. I love, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, I love being able to search online auctions. And I do this all the time. Like, my favorite, like, early morning or late night activity is to go on the various auction apps on my phone. eBay, Golden, Heritage, Fanatics Collect, Pristine. I love calling up the auction apps and searching for keywords. But I'm always searching for the same keywords. For me, it's Dream Team. For me, it's USA Basketball. For me, it's Tebow. I'll put those in. DJ Lagway. I'll put in like the keywords of, guys, maybe a particular LeBron card or a particular Kobe card that I'm after. But I'm always putting in these keywords. Those are the keywords that fit my collection. That's what I'm going after right now. How about you? What's your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes it easier to locate the cards you actually want if you have that level of focus. There's nothing wrong with enjoying novelty. I mean, if that's what you like, and some people do really like having tons of cards, but there comes a point for a lot of people where you just suddenly realize everything's in boxes, if you're lucky, if it's not spread all over your bedroom or your kitchen table, and it's in boxes, and maybe it's not even sorted, and it's tucked away, and you're like, well, why do I have this? I don't even know what I have. I don't even know what I necessarily have in here. The more you focus, the more you curate, the easier it makes to organize your collection. You can display and have themes, set up along different parts of your wall or your room or wherever you might do that. You can put things into binders. I know people who put high-end things into binders. They make binders that actually hold graded cards if that's what you want to do. So the whole piece around focus just makes it easier to obtain things that are going to be meaningful to you. And I do think it enriches your collecting experience overall, just kind of knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Why do I collect in the first place? What's the point of this? Well, it's kind of a way for me to preserve some nostalgia. It's a way for me to remember iconic seasons from players or all-time greats, or maybe players who were kind of a few tiers down that I don't want to forget about, the Johan Santanas of the world or something along those lines. But it's a very natural evolution. And I do encounter people who seem to really like dig in on not changing. They just want to stay with what they like. Maybe that's their personality and their temperament. If that's the case, fine. A lot of times those people do have already like a predefined set of things that they do or don't have. My like main piece of like advice or caution to those people, if they want to be a part of the community, is don't overly project your own strong opinions about what you go after onto others. It's fine to share your opinion and share why you're enthusiastic about some particular thing, But if it starts coming at the expense of being condescending and demoralizing and demeaning about what other people's like to do, I think that's just where it starts to cross the line. It's bad for the overall community aspect of the hobby.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think, and I do want to be clear, people can hobby however they want to hobby.
Yep.
And that's an important thing about this. Like I am a firm believer that there is no right or wrong way to approach the hobby. People are going to approach it however they want to approach it. And that's fine. Now, I do think financially, if you're in it for investing, you have to be careful. There is a right and wrong way to approach it.
I say collect what you like.
Yep.
Invest in what others like.
That's a great statement.
That's the best way to do it. And if it's an investment, and if your Venn diagram overlaps with those things heavily, good for you.
Yep.
Because you were the kid who liked Michael Jordan, and it paid off. But if you want to build a PC and collect, things, and you're like, I don't really care if this appreciates in value, or maybe it's even going to go down, but I'm going to enjoy this process so much as my hobby, fine. But if you want the value to go up over time, you have to go after the top 100 most iconic cards. You have to go over the stuff with staying power of the best players from the best sets or their rookie cards, and that's the stuff that's going to retain value more long term.
That's a great statement. I love that statement. And I think if people out there listening think of that statement in relation to their own collection, collect what you like, invest in what others like. And then there's times, as you said, and I think where it gets really fun is when you're investing in what others like, but that also is what you like, right? For me, that would be the Dream Team stuff. Like I'm buying all this Dream Team stuff, a lot of memorabilia, some cards. And in my opinion, it is both a good long-term investment and something I love to collect. To me, that's kind of a crossover. Now, whether it is a good long-term investment, we're not going to know for a long time, and you'll probably never know from me because I'm not really intending on ever reselling it unless Kim at some point tells me it's got to all get out of the house. It's getting too crazy. But sometime maybe my kids sell it or something like that. Then we'll find out if it was a good long-term investment or not. But I think it is. I think it's going to be that. I got a lot of reasons why. We're not going to talk about those now, but I love collecting it. So that to me is a crossover area. On the other hand, this, I got a lot of Tim Tebow cards. I love Tim Tebow. I'm not going to pretend that Tim Tebow falls in the category of a good long-term investment. But it's a guy I love to collect. So I have no problem buying Tim Tebow cards. Now, what I will say, I rarely spend big money on a Tim Tebow card. I sometimes turn things down. Like I was at the Dallas Card Show a couple of weeks ago, and there was a guy that came up to me that had a 1-of-1 flawless Tim Tebow. He thought for sure I was going to be the buyer of that card. And, he wanted, I forget, like $1,000 for it or something. And I'm like, like I own a ton of Tebow. I'm pretty happy with what I own. I actually have a flawless 1-of-1, a couple of others from other years. This is just another flawless 1-of-1, $1,000. I'm not going to put that into that one. And I've spent more than that on certain Tebow cards before, but they were ones that I really, really wanted and was chasing. But I recognize Tebow's not an investment. So if I see a cool Tebow card, will I throw $100 or $200 at it? Absolutely. But if I'm going to throw $1,000 at it, knowing that it's not an investment and that there's very few buyers out there in the world that are going to spend $1,000 on a Tim Tebow card other than me, I'm only going to throw $1,000 at it if it's one that I'm like, I got to have that card. And there are some of those. If anybody out there has the Tim Tebow green PMG, I'm the buyer of that. I'll stroke a check. We can get into the thousands for that card. I want that card that badly because I've not been able to obtain it. I've only ever seen one in my life. There's theoretically 10 of them out there. I've only ever seen one in my life. And of course, the guy doesn't want to sell it because he's never seen another one either. So, but that one I will spend the money on. I spent the money on the Tim Tebow green Kaboom 1-of-1. I paid thousands of dollars for that card. Probably an idiotic investment to spend thousands of dollars on a Tim Tebow, card. But I had to have it. Yeah. It's like that's one that I'm just like, I gotta have that for my collection. I love that card. Yeah. But there are plenty of other Tebow cards that I wouldn't necessarily spend the money on because I don't think it overlaps. Yeah. I know you're the same way with Andre Drummond.
I have the same exact experience with Drummond, and that was Drummond's the perfect example. He was my springboard back into the hobby. I wanted to collect a Pistons player, an active Pistons player. They had been through a lot of mediocrity in the 2010s, and he was their most consistent and best player overall for that stretch. And his cards were cheap, so it was a good way for me to sort of scratch the itch of buying a lot of things and chasing rainbows and stuff. And I've completed a lot of rainbows, and I have a lot of one-of-ones. And over the last year, it's difficult because I even built Drummond Card Collector on Instagram. Like, it's sort of an identity, a hobby identity. But I'm getting ready to start moving some Drummond cards. I've got a lot. And to your point about like having many of the same types of cards, like I have just a bunch. So in the last year, I refined it down to I'm only going to collect Drummond Pistons cards. Like, I'm a Pistons fan. That's why I like Drummond. I'm not a Cavs fan or a Bulls fan or a Nets fan or a Lakers fan or a Sixers fan or all the other teams he's been on in the last 3 years. So that's one curation process. And then the next is just sort of look at 5 different cards that look exactly the same. Maybe they're patch autos and other things, and say, okay, I can consolidate some of this down into some other things. And I can put it toward something else that's really cool, like the Essential Credentials Grant Hill card that I bought here at Cards HQ, or other things along those lines, or pest control for my attic, or what, just you start going through that process. It's not easy. It's really not easy for a lot of people, but like deep down inside, if I get rid of this card, am I going to like keep thinking about it over and over again? And if the answer is no, it's okay to let it go. It's okay to let it go. Distribute that, passion for Pistons cards or whatever it might be out to other people who would enjoy having those, and then just keep refining your collection along the way. Half the fun of the hobby is like the chase and the acquisition. And if you just sort of like are sitting on a pile of stuff that you don't actually have as much passion around anymore, you're just not doing yourself any favors at the end of the day. And then finally, to the investment piece, what I would say is, if you do plan to hold cards for a long time, keep your family members in mind, right? At some point, you're not going to be here. Your children might be, or somebody else. What are they going to do with those cards? And, maybe you want it to pay off more than not. Maybe you need to think about that distribution and just saying, the collect what you like is very true. But if you have stuff that's going to be like a decent payday for them, eventually to help pay for some stuff in their lives, that can be, a helpful, thoughtful process along the way as well.
Absolutely. All great tips. Let's end the episode on this. Give the audience one piece of advice for somebody who right now is listening to this episode. It's resonating with them because they're sitting on a bunch of cards. They're feeling like their collection is maybe a little unfocused, a little overwhelming. They're trying to figure out, how do I move forward from here? What piece of advice would you give them?
First advice I would say is I've just did 2 different videos in the last few months on the Market Movers channel on how to organize and display and do all those things with your cards. So the first one was probably 8-10 weeks ago. Just go on the Market Movers channel and search that. Watch those videos because I give some really good tips on how to just get your thoughts organized even before you start to try to tackle how to sort all of those. And then I talk in those videos about where you can look to sell some of those cards and the pros and cons too. If you just want a blank slate, maybe you just go in and you go, this is what I want to keep, get rid of all the rest, bring in the Cards HQ, call up a local dealer, do something along those lines, try to get on an episode of Chasing Cardboard, who knows? But like you can go that route, but there are more like tactical ways that you can chip away at it along the way too, whether selling on eBay, setting up at a local show yourself, sending things to ComC and the like. So I would just say, try to get organized and get started. Piece it out. Like, you don't have to do it all at once, but set aside 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you have per day. Start getting everything organized so that you can start moving some things. You're going to be really happy when you get whatever that amount of money might be, whether it's $100 or $10,000 or more. Now you can make a decision about what you want to do with that money.
I totally agree. Great advice, T-Pott. This has been great. Thank you for coming on. Good conversation. Hopefully the audience got a lot of value out of this. And I want to remind all of you out there that these Geoff Wilson shows, the full-length episodes, are available on Apple Podcasts. They're available on Spotify, and they're available on YouTube under the Geoff Wilson Show channel. Make sure you are subscribed everywhere so you can listen to the show on the go. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon with our next one. Take care.